What's going on, everyone? Scott here. Welcome back to the channel. So Deadpool and Wolverine just released the end of last week, so I thought it was a good time to go through my personal MCU movie tier list. Not going to be including any of the shows or specials, anything on here. Also not going to be including any of the previous, technically Marvel movies now, but like Deadpool 1, Deadpool 2, Logan, any of the other technically Marvel stuff, but wasn't part of the MCU until recently. Not going to be including any of those. Just going to be doing movies that are all designated in the MCU. So I got 5 tiers here on the screen. Got S tier, top of the top, major implications on the franchise as a whole, and overall just great movies. A tier, movies that I really enjoyed, maybe didn't have as much to do with, the future of the MCU or have major long-term implications, but still loved the movies. B tier, I got movies that were solid, had long-term effects on the MCU as a whole and implications, but didn't love them as much as the movies that we had in A and S, but they were still important in the grand scheme of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. C tier, movies didn't really like. If they're on, I'll probably keep it on, but no movies that I would, voluntarily really go out of my way to watch, but a lot of them are important for the franchise as a whole. And then F tier, just movies that I watched once and honestly have not gone back to because, they're just, when you see the movies in F tier, you'll understand. I believe most of them are pretty common. Besides one, I know will get a lot of backlash, but most of them are common, bottom tier MCU movies. But at the end of the day, I do love pretty much all of the MCU movies, whether I rewatch them or not, because I love the franchise, and all of them are obviously important in the 34 movies and the shows and, specials that we've got throughout the MCU run. So let's just get it started. But first, before we do that, if you could, hit that like and subscribe button down below if you do enjoy this video. So we're actually going to start in F tier. And so what I've done is I've actually, when I go through each tier, they're going to be ordered in that tier of how I like them. So technically, the last movie in F tier is number 34 on my list. And at the end, I have a whole graphic of the rankings 1 through 34. But doing this tier list here, that's how we're going to do it. So we got the F tier movies up here. Obviously, we got 6 movies on here. Last, Thor: The Dark World, just one. And I guess I'll kind of loop in Thor, which is right next to it right here. I just never really got into the Thor movies. Personally, I'm not a big, of the mythology and all the gods, and, I'm not really big into that part of the Marvel Universe. So neither of those were really up my alley, and I thought both of them were hard to sit through, but Thor: The Dark World, a little harder to sit through than the first Thor movie. Then right after that, we have The Incredible Hulk. Obviously, the big reason, an elephant in the room. It's not the same. It's not Mark Ruffalo. Obviously, here you have Edward Norton. It's the Hulk, so different casting than we have throughout. There's really only been, 1 or 2 of those where they recast, kind of major, players, obviously with Rhodey, 2 and Iron Man, and we'll get to that in a little bit here. Incredible Hulk sliding into F tier as well. Doctor Strange, the first one, just never got into it. The magic part and all that just wasn't my type of MCU. That wasn't. And once you see my A and S tier, you'll understand what I'm looking for in an MCU movie in general. And Doctor Strange just wasn't it. Then this one, I know this one will get a lot of backlash because I know a lot of people do like it. Thor Ragnarok. It's just Thor in general, and the last movie I have in F here, Thor: Love and Thunder. I know a lot of people probably have that last, if not second to last, with The Dark World. I think Dark World is pretty much going to be consensus for most people as the worst MCU movie. But Ragnarok, kind of same thing. There was some better parts in it. I like, Mark Ruffalo and the Hulk coming in and, kind of that portion, Korg, all that. But for me personally, still hard to sit through. Thor: Love and Thunder, still hard to sit through, but I did like the gore piece, which they would have used more of him. And I thought the humor was a little bit funny. I don't think that humor was probably the right spot for that movie, but that's the direction they went, and overall just F tier movie in my opinion. Next, we're going to go up to C tier, and I know this tier will probably get the most backlash, and I know if just looking at the screen right now, you see all the movies on there. A lot of people might just turn this off, but this is my list. So here we go. In C tier, we got Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, Volume 1, and Volume 3. All the last three movies there in C. Just wasn't my cup of tea. That's just all it comes down to. I know these are probably in some people's A tier or S tier. Just wasn't for me. Personally, that's just how I felt. And yeah, I thought the third one definitely was the best one. But there was just some certain portions of it that just didn't sit right with me and wasn't vibing with it overall. So that's why I got them right there. Then I had the first Iron Man. Little hard to sit through at some points. But obviously, the first MCU movie, super important for the 33 movies that followed it, obviously. And Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man is probably in Hollywood history one of the best character cast in movie history, not just MCU history. But so respect on that front, but as a whole, hard to sit through. Kind of can say the same thing about Eternals. The cast was great, and there was points of the movie that were really good for me, and I liked it more than most people when it did come out. But I just don't think it's aged well. We just haven't really, I know kind of most people's gripe with it is we haven't seen any follow-up to some of the stuff that was revealed in there, so, which I think we are soon, coming up, Captain America, next Valentine's Day, 2025, finally, but overall as a whole, certain parts of it are still hard to sit through, so that's why we got it in C tier, and then Iron Man 2 and 3 to close out the C tier list on here. Same thing, a little bit easier to sit through than some of these, but good parts of both of them. Still got to put them in C tier, in my opinion. Then we move up to B tier. Okay, so these are movies that I like. I will rewatch, but won't rush to the TV to rewatch them. But really good movies overall. First, in B tier, Avengers Age of Ultron. Probably it is my least favorite Avengers, movie as a whole. I just wasn't a big, Ultron and, kind of that side of everything. I do like that, obviously, we were introduced to Wanda Maximoff in here, and she's one of my favorite MCU characters. So that was one good thing that came from it. I like Hawkeye's, kind of character arc in this one as well, but got to put it in B tier, still not at that A or S tier for me. Then Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania. I know this is probably C or F tier for most people. I still love the Ant-Man movies. I love Scott Lang and, kind of the whole vibe of Ant-Man. Obviously, you don't see them so obvious on the screen so far, so obviously, clearly, the first two Ant-Man movies are going to be A or S tier for me. But so I still like it as a whole, but what knocks this movie down to B tier for me is a couple things. One, I don't like, as much as I love Catherine Newton, and I think she plays Cassie Lang well, I hate that we've had, 2 different recasts of Cassie Lang now in the MCU? No, 3, because of Endgame. We've had, 3 different Cassie Lang recasts, a problem that I said with Hulk, Iron Man, with Rhodey in there. That's not the main reason for having it here. That, and then, in my opinion, the biggest reason is obviously everything that's happened behind the scenes with, the Kang actor, Jonathan Majors, and, actually moving away from the Kang storyline now. That's what knocks it down to B. If they were able to clean some of that stuff up and all that stuff off the screen didn't happen, it might be pushing A tier for me, and that mainly just speaks to how much I like Ant-Man as a whole and the vibe of those movies. Next up, we got Black Widow. A lot of people hated this movie, and I think this is just a classic people believing what they read on the internet. If you actually watch this movie is really good. I do agree, and probably the only reason that I have it in B tier is because it came out about 5 to 8 years, 10 years too late. If it would have came out in the height of, say after Civil War or Winter Soldier, if it would have came out in there, I think audience as a whole would have received it better and liked it better. But I think where it came out in the timeline of things after Natasha had obviously already sacrificed herself in Avengers Endgame, I think that's a big part of it. And it doesn't matter that much to me. That's why I still have it in B. But people throw it in C or F for no reason, just because the internet tells you to hate it. But I still love it. Obviously, Scarlett Johansson is incredible. as Natasha Romanoff in Black Widow. Getting introduced to Yelena here, awesome. She's one of my favorite characters in the MCU as well. So good stuff came out of this movie. Just could have been better timing, I guess. Then second to last in B tier got the first Avengers movie. And I know a lot of people and a lot of people I've talked to will have this in their A or S tier, or one of, if not their favorite MCU movie, because of the nostalgia of it and it being the first, Avengers team up movie seen on screen and stuff like that. Me, I was not watching the MCU at the time that the Avengers came out. I wasn't super into like superhero movies and stuff like that. Like I watched Spider-Man, like Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man as a kid, but I wasn't into the MCU and the Marvel superhero lore in general. So I wasn't watching it this time. So if I would have seen it when it came out, saw it in theater and have that memory to it, because some of these movies in A and S tier are at that spot for me because of like nostalgia of watching it in theaters and the build up to it. But that wasn't for Avengers me at the time. I was about 6 years removed from catching that when it came out. So that's why I have it in B tier personally, but it does, kind of tie in a little bit to one of, not one of, it is my favorite MCU show, and that's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. That was kind of, with Agent Coulson there, that's what kind of kicked off Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and that run, and that's one of my top 5 favorite just shows in general, but it's definitely my favorite MCU show. So that's why I got it in B tier here. Then last one in B tier, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. I love this movie, super funny. I just got it on B tier kind of for the same reason that I have Eternals in C tier. Some of the stuff we haven't seen a lot of follow-up to, at least to this point. I think we will eventually, but it's just kind of, at this point, it's a great cast, good movie overall. I just have it in B tier because we just haven't seen the repercussions and kind of the follow-up to that. So it's kind of like Eternals. It's kind of just like a standalone movie right now. Like obviously it's part of the MCU, but we haven't seen what comes from it. And, we haven't seen these characters in other things yet. I know we will eventually. When we do that, I think we might revisit this. Obviously we will, but I think once we do that, might get pushed up into A tier. But for right now, I got it in B tier. Now, starting last 2 tiers, A tier. First movie in A tier, well, technically last movie in A tier, Ant-Man. The first Ant-Man, as I've said multiple times throughout this, I love the Ant-Man, vibe and the whole, just kind of Ant-Man feel for the movie. It's a fun time at the movies, and there's certain parts of the Ant-Man story, obviously, we'll see coming up here in a little bit as you see Ant-Man and the Wasp there. But it's just a fun time at the movies, and that's what I love about some of these MCU movies. Like, yes, some of them need to be deep and, have this emotional, arc and story to it, but some of them you just need to kind of have a fun movie, but still be serious at times in the movie so it ties into everything. And Ant-Man does that for me. Next up, we got Spider-Man Far From Home and Spider-Man Homecoming, the first 2 Spider-Man movies for Tom Holland in the MCU. Just an overall fun time. Tom Holland, in my opinion, is the best Spider-Man, and with all due respect to Tobey and Andrew, I grew up watching Tobey Maguire back in the early 2000s as Spider-Man, but in my opinion, Tom Holland is the best Spider-Man. Peter Parker in general. Zendaya is incredible as MJ as well. Cast, Ned, all the way on down. So we got both of the Spider-Mans back to back right here in A tier. Next up, this one I know will get a lot of hate because a lot of people dislike the movie. Don't know why. Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. I know the first Doctor Strange I have down in F tier. Only reason this is up in A tier is because of, 1, Wanda, as I've said, one of my favorite MCU characters, but 2, also the multiverse. This is really, besides Spider-Man No Way Home, this is really the first, time we kind of dive into, one of the first times, should I say, that we dive into the multiverse in the MCU. And America Chavez is incredible. Wanda is incredible in it, even though she's a villain in this. But still, I love Multiverse of Madness. I don't get the hate for it. Personally, I think that's another one, like Black Widow and like another movie I have coming up in this A tier. It's online. People just tell you to hate it, but it's really a good movie. Next up, we got the Marvels. I know this one is probably down there with Dark World for most people, but Captain Marvel, Brie Larson, Carol Danvers, one of my favorite characters in the MCU as a whole. And I love Miss Marvel. I love Monica Rambeau as well. And I think there, at the end of this movie, obviously, there's pretty big implications for the next kind of steps in the MCU too. So I love the movie. Got it in A tier. Next up, Captain America: The First Avenger. This one is probably still an incredible movie. Obviously, I have it in A tier, but the least of the three Captain America movies. But I just still have it this high because I love this, kind of time period. And, seeing Steve Rogers, go through the army and, becoming Captain America and all that. And, kind of his first missions there back in that time period. And one of my other favorite MCU shows is Agent Carter, Peggy Carter in here as well. So yeah, that's why I got it in A tier right here. Next up, the movie that just came out that we all just saw last week, Deadpool and Wolverine. I was, again, late to the Deadpool game. I actually just watched them within a week of this one coming out. I just didn't really watch anything. Once I started watching the MCU, I didn't watch anything besides the MCU stuff. Like, I didn't watch Deadpool. I didn't watch any of the X-Men. I'm slowly getting through the stuff now, obviously, that it's going to be a big part of the MCU going forward. But I love the Deadpool movies, catching up on them. And, this movie, Deadpool and Wolverine, was incredible. Laughing the entire time. But yeah, just incredible, and, incredible references in it. Not just to the MCU and, kind of, the Fox characters coming over and everything. And also just, kind of references to their, real life as well, that I think, pulled the movie together really well. And yeah, it's one of the best movies in the MCU, and definitely right inside the top 10. Next up, Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. Obviously, this is the first movie without Chadwick Boseman after he sadly passed. But this movie, I thought, paid an incredible tribute to him, both firstly as an actor and the human that Chadwick Boseman was, but then also to T'Challa and the Black Panther as a whole. I thought they did an incredible job wrapping all that together, and then also creating a story that was compelling, sad, interesting, while weaving all these emotions together into one movie. So that's why I have it in A tier. Next up, Ant-Man and the Wasp. Another Ant-Man reason. Super fun, lighthearted movie, but then also has implications, with the Pym particles and the quantum realm. Obviously had huge implications for Infinity War Endgame, but then also going forward as well. Had and has big implications on the MCU as a whole. So that's why I got an A here. Next up, Black Panther. And now, Black Panther, this is where I came into the MCU. Now, technically, the first MCU movie I saw was Spider-Man Homecoming. Saw it in theaters, but still wasn't like watching the MCU. Just watched it because it was a Spider-Man movie coming out, and, went to the movies, watched Spider-Man growing up. So that was technically the first one I watched. But Black Panther was the first one and I didn't even really want to go to it. My, girlfriend at the time, fiance now, was like, oh, let's go see it. Her family was into MCU stuff, but I never did. But I was like, fine, I'll go, like, whatever, like, going to the movies, sit there, watched it, and was absolutely blown away. Loved the movie and was like, I needed to know more. So literally, as soon as the movie got out, like the next day, went all the way back to Iron Man, and went on, caught up on everything. And then ever since I've caught up, haven't missed a premiere movie. Seeing it on Thursday, don't want to be spoiled, watching all these YouTubes and theories, whatever. So Black Panther definitely, besides it being an incredible movie, has a special place for me because it's kind of where I really dove into the MCU and came into, these movies and the cinematic universe as a whole. Next up, Captain Marvel, last movie in A tier. As I've said before, Brie Larson, Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel, she's one of my favorite characters in the MCU. Top two, her and T'Challa, Black Panther, probably my two favorite characters in the MCU. And I like the movie as a whole. I like kind of the throwback theme and, going through all this stuff. I don't understand the hate for it overall. But again, one of these, like, there's about 4 or 5 of these MCU movies that it's just gets the online hate because people online tell you to hate it. So that wraps up A tier, and we're going to jump into S tier, the top tier. And these are, the best movies, best made movies, and then also have the biggest implications as a whole. The last movie we have in S tier, Avengers Infinity War. Now, I know some people have this as first or second, but I have this right here. Just some of the movies we have in front of it, I just have so slightly above it. All these are really, really super close. But at Infinity War, the first one, next up, we got the 2 Captain America films, Civil War and then Winter Soldier. Civil War is just incredible, introducing Tom Holland as Spider-Man. And we have Black Panther officially getting introduced in Civil War as well. Just an all-around incredible movie and incredible concept as well. And then Winter Soldier, this is like Hydra is my favorite like villain or bad organization, whatever you want to say, in the MCU. If you've watched Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., the Hydra run kind of through the first really like 4 seasons, but really tap back in a little bit later too. But that kind of run and Hydra in general, that's like that whole storyline and, you know, good. That's my favorite in the MCU as a whole. So that's why I have Winter Soldier right there. And then the second to first movie, the second movie, I guess, is the smartest way to say it there, but is Spider-Man No Way Home. Just incredible. And this is one that people probably have this towards the top, probably A tier, but this is one that the experience of seeing this movie and the hype and build up to it is what gives it that extra notch for me and moves it up to S tier. I mean, watching the movies and the theories, are Toby and Andrew going to be in this movie? Who's going to be in this movie? What's going to happen? And then seeing it opening night and, you know, really because of, you know, COVID and the shutdowns, this was really the first big movie where it was like full theaters, really, and like reaction. Obviously, there was, you know, some other ones like Black Widow, Shang-Chi, Eternals. They all came out during that same time, but this one was like Endgame reactions, like standing up, cheering in theaters. The experience as a whole and the movie, I think, still holds up now. Still rewatch it every once in a while, and it was incredible. So that's why I got that right there. But then the top movie here in S tier, probably no surprise to most people, Avengers Endgame. I mean, just the culmination of all the movies that, you know, came before it, kind of leading up for a decade to this movie and all the different storylines. Did such a good job weaving it all in. And it was really just nonstop throughout. Like there's like 1 or 2 little lulls that I like to call, like, if you're in the theater, it's a nice little bathroom, you know, little bathroom break, you know, kind of in these areas. But besides that, like it's constant. It's constant the whole time, delivers on the action, but the emotion as well. Obviously wrapping up a handful of these characters, you know, going forward. So that's why I got that as my top S tier movie. So this is what the tier list looks like. That's what we have it right there. But now I'm just going to briefly throw up on the screen. These are the MCU rankings 1 through 34 that I got there listed. Same order as here, just now in number form. But yeah, that's where we sit with the MCU rankings. We'll probably next update it next Valentine's Day, 2025. We'll update it once Captain America Brave New World comes out. The trailers have looked amazing. And then we got some pretty exciting stuff coming after that. But I will be back here. I want to do a character tier list as well, and then want to do a MCU shows list tier list as well. But that'll do it for this one. Thank you all so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Peace out.